It's the Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. Brand new stuff from Saints of the Underground, a song called Good Times. And on the phone, a guy that knows a lot about Good Times, Ratt drummer, Saints of the Underground drummer, Bobby Blotzer. Bobby, how you doing, man?
What's up? Doing great.
Excellent.
Nice to talk to you.
Well, Bobby, I just hung up maybe a little while ago with your partner in crime, Jani Lane, on Saints of the Underground, and just sounds like, much like Jani, you are a very busy guy with Ratt and with Saints, and just a busy time for you, huh?
It's never busy enough, to be honest with you, because I like nothing better than to have a full plate every day, just about. As long as there's enough time to play a few rounds of golf and hit the lake, go skiing, in between, I'm happy. But things are busy now. I just finished yesterday, as a matter of fact. I'm doing an autobiography book that I've been working on for the last 7 months, and that should be coming out this summer sometime. I just acquired an agent that is same agent that was involved with Slash's book and Tommy Lee and Nicky's book. So he's just come on board, and he'll be going and getting us the deal where this thing needs to go.
Right.
So I'm excited and anxious about that, and we're just putting together the Ratt tour right now, and got the Saints record coming out on April 22nd, and it's a good time. It's going to be a good year, I think.
Now, with a book, Bobby, how many people are going to be looking for you with a baseball bat once it comes out?
Well, let's see. I've tested the waters with a few, with some chapters. I don't know. I don't know. It's not really a snitch and tell book. It's more, this is my story, and this is where I've, come from point A to whatever point I'm at now. Who knows what that is, and if you're referencing the alphabet or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
49, dude. I've been rocking since I was 13 years old, playing music, and it's a lifetime thing for me, obviously, and it's been a great ride, and it's continuing to be a great ride, and this book has got a lot of really funny stories and a lot of different things of different other friends of mine, famous bands and friends that are not famous, that things that we do and hang out, and great stories. Just I've gotten pretty good reviews from the few chapters, like I said, I have sent out, so it's encouraging.
Well, with the new, I guess I'll call it a new band, Saints of the Underground. Obviously you've hooked up with Jani Lane, and you brought along some guys that I know from the past, as far as Robbie currently with Ratt, and obviously Kerry Kelly. How did this project come to be? Because I understand this is kind of your baby.
Well, so it became mine because here's exactly how it started. Originally in 2000. After Ratt and Warrant went out and toured, I guess Jani put together a little jam band with Mike Fasano, who was Warrant's drummer at the time, and he got Kerry, who was Ratt's rhythm guitar player, and Robbie Crane, and he had a little thing called Jani Lane and the Underdogs, and they just went out and played a bunch of kind of trippy material, cover shit, but a lot of like stuff that Jani likes, like Blink 189 and whomever these bands are. He likes to, turn in Japanese, like new wave kind of stuff.
Right.
So I had went down and filled in for Fasano on a couple occasions, and it was fun. I like jamming with the guys, of course, and the material was pretty, interesting to jam to. And then Lane split, and we brought in Karabi and changed the name up to the Angel City Outlaws. And then I started booking the thing, and when we weren't touring with Ratt, and it was great because it was a way, while we weren't all on the road, to keep playing, making a few bucks, having fun, going out drinking beer and playing cover shit, And then it became stuff like the stuff that me and Karabi pretty much grew up on, which was a lot of Bowie, Stones, Queen, Beatles, Aerosmith, Cheap Trick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on and on. And we just had a good time with it. So I had eventually got a call about putting Ratt on a Judas Priest tribute record, and Warren DeMartini didn't want to do it. He doesn't really like, I guess, doing tribute things or anything like that, which was a drag because, we were being offered a pretty good, payday for virtually an afternoon's of fun,
right,
on a pre-stand. So I basically just, when he said he didn't want to do it, I took it and brought the Outlaws in there. We all went in, had a good time at Carrie's studio, drank beers, and recorded this song, and had a great time.
Right.
Everybody walked away with, a good little chunk of dough in their pocket for just nothing, and basically the production people that were putting this record together asked if we ever entertained doing an original record, which, of course I said, sure. We just haven't done that and haven't really planned it out or thought about it, because, we had thought and talked a little bit, but it was more on the lines of doing maybe a record of covers. But the short of it is that everybody, writes and has material. So when this came up to be, to me, to be asked if we were interested in a record of original material, absolutely was my response. And I went to the guys, and it took took a lot of work, but I finally, got everything put together. And at that time, I had moved from L.A. to Houston, where I had opened a recording studio down there, and we cut the record there and mixed it in L.A. Andy Johns and I mixed it in L.A. And Janie was there at the mixes as well.
Okay.
But Carrie, myself and Carrie, we produced the record, and now it's coming out on Warrior Records, and it's a really good record. I'm very proud of it, and I think people will totally dig it. And I guess you were just mentioning Good Times. That's a song I wrote years ago, and that song has seen 3 different writing versions, and I really like this one. And Janie came in and put his 2 cents into the song, and I appreciated his, what he did, in changing it around to the extreme. It's not extremely different, but he's, because I put it on this solo record I did called 24/7,
right, which
I did in 2001 with John Corabi singing. And I was playing all the guitars and basses and all that stuff, and he came in and sang it. But, there's a little change up of that tune on there, and we did a song called Dead Man's Shoes that I wrote years ago, and, which Janie came in and put his Lane stamp on, and I, again, commend him for, I think Lane's an excellent writer, and he is really good with melodies and harmony stacking and these sort of things. So, and I'm sorry about this long-winded answer here, but that's the gist of it.
Very cool. Well, Bobby, this is not your first time doing a quote-unquote super group of sorts. You obviously did, back in when was that now, 89 or 90, the Contraband thing.
Yeah.
Obviously when you do these kind of records, it's, it can either be a really fun experience or it can be a test of whose ego is the biggest. How is this project different from the Contraband project?
Well, both things were kind of, sort of had the same mechanics. This one, or let's just start with the Contraband one. That one was put together by Alan Kovac, who was our manager in Ratt, our band Ratt's manager. He managed L.A. Guns. He managed Michael Schenker. He managed Vixen and a band called Shark Island. So all those bands I just listed were comprised the members of Contraband. So he was starting a new label and put that together. And for me, it was 2 things. Number one, the chance to get to play with Michael Schenker, because I was a major fan and still am a major fan of Michael Schenker's playing and songs he's written with UFO and such. Secondly, it was an excellent payday. He meaning Alan Kovac and the label were pretty generous, I thought, for what they paid us to do this thing. It took me, I rehearsed that stuff for like 3 days, and I recorded it and did all my drum tracks in, 4 days. So, for that amount of time, I think we made $20,000 a piece for that back then. So, and it was just fun. We were all in there at different times, so it wasn't, other than the rehearsal, I was in there tracking with, Tracy and Cher and me, and then, then Michael went in and did his solos, and Tracy went in and did his solos. Richard Black went in and did his vocals. I wasn't in the studio for any of that,
Right.
But same thing with this record, kind of, Carrie, Kelly, and I, and Chuck Wright, who we enlisted to play bass on it. Robbie Crane is in the band, but he was unavailable to do the sessions. So Chuck is an old friend and a great bassist, and he came out to Houston and basically, you know, showed him the songs on the spot. I can't remember.
Look at your screen right now. If you're tired of the hide-and-seek games with big tech, where links disappear and episodes get throttled, I've got the fix. I'm Chris Akin, and it's time for me to show you how to take back your access to the Classic Metal Show, the Seth Williams Show, and Chris Akin Presents. Pick up your phone, go to the App Store or Google Play, and download the Locals app. It is 100% free. Once you're in, just search for the CMS Network. You're going to see everything. Every interview, every unfiltered rant, every deep dive music discussion, every uncensored news article we put up, all in one centralized, uncensored hub. No more chasing links across 5 different socials. This is our home. But if you really want the keys to the kingdom, look for that VIP upgrade. For just $4.99 a month, you're cutting out the commercials, getting the advanced drops before anyone else, and accessing bonus episodes that are way too heavy, dirty, or we just don't want to share with the free public. For the price of a cheap beer, you're supporting independent, unapologetic media. Download the Locals app today. Get some CMS wherever you are. And if you're a real one, join the VIP squad at classicmetalshow.locals.com. The Classic Metal Show and the CMS Network. It's uncensored. It's unapologetic. We will see you there.
I sent him like some MP3s of some of the stuff, but some of the stuff it was like on the fly, you know.
Right.
I mean, originally I was going to just play bass on the record, you know, but we decided to, or Carrie for that matter, or Lane. I mean, all of us are, you know, kind of multi-talented and versatile on different instruments, but you know, we went with Chuck, which was a good move for sure, because he's a hell of a great bass player and much better than myself. And, you know, us three were in there doing that. Janie came down and started some vocals in my studio and then finished them up at Carrie's place out here in L.A., and that's pretty much it. And, you know, we're all good friends, and it's going to be nice to take this out and tour it and play these songs live. I'm very anxious to do that. You know?
Sure. When do you think that'll be? Because I know everybody, you know, obviously Cooper's touring, you guys are touring, Warrant's touring all summer. You guys going to have time to get out there on the road with this?
I'm guessing probably fall.
Okay.
When this will happen, you know. We were going to try and do some shows in April here. It just didn't pan out, you know. There were logistical problems with getting, you know, the dates together and this sort of thing. You know, I have Ratt shows right in the middle of the month here. You know, I have 4 House of Blues shows on the West Coast, Vegas, L.A., Anaheim, and San Diego starting April 17th. So we'll be in rehearsing prior to those shows. That kind of chops the month up, you know what I mean? For us to make this, you know, make sense on a level monetarily to put, you know, this thing up together and do a run of a couple weeks, you know, and rehearse it. I just, you know, it wasn't working out, unfortunately.
Sure. I hear you. Well, obviously, Bobby, the main band, I'm sure, is still Ratt, and you know, clearly, you guys put it back together last year. You brought Steven back, and I guess the obvious question, since we didn't get a chance to talk to you, you know, last year before you guys did go out on the road, is how was it that you guys were able to put the bad blood behind you? Because obviously, you know, in the press there was all kinds of bad blood, and there was lawsuits and everything else. That's a lot of bad blood to put in the past, and you know, and then work together again.
You know, I can speak for myself. I can't really speak for Warren and Steven. It was an insanely tedious thing to get this going. Just the undertaking, because you know, Juan Crucier was involved. We were putting the 4 surviving members back together, and we were on the phone every day for, you know, like, I'm not even kidding. Some days it would be 3-hour, 4-hour phone, you know, meetings.
Right.
To me, it was almost like a cleansing counseling session daily. I was like really getting tired of it, because we just, while some of us were coming to grips, and on the same page of how we want to do things, there were others that wouldn't, and we would have to rehash it, and finally, we were three of us, Stephen Warren and I, were on the same page, and Juan just never came to the plate, so to say, and unfortunately for him, he's not in this band, which
right.
he should have been. So for me to get over my situation with, the bad blood with Stephen, simply was this, man, I don't approve of what he did in leaving the band a couple times he did, and he had his reasons, and they were, his reasons, but, he didn't really put anybody before himself on that, and I don't want to re-dredge this.
Well, sure.
And I cover this in the book, too, and I'm not trying to allude to the book, but I will, I go into detail in the book about it. But, it was a thing where I still cared about Stephen even while we were in court. He has been my bro since, he lived with me in 1982, and I've known him since like 78 or something.
Sure.
So, while he pissed me off, there was a point where my own blood brother, Ronnie, and I didn't speak for 8 years. So shit happens in families, and we are a family. While we don't, celebrate Christmas Eve together, it doesn't mean we don't, deeply care for each other,
Right.
Let's put it this way, he's been more in my life than the 5 girlfriends that I've had in my life. So, I forgive, and I hope that he, gave me the same leeway with some of the things that I came out with personally in the internet and said, because at the time, to be honest with you, I was going through a heavy breakup with a chick. He quit the band the second time. Things were pretty fucked. And,
right.
I didn't really realize what I was doing on the internet. I felt like I was just, getting, sticking it to him, you know what I mean, personally. I just didn't realize because I was new to it at the time, to be honest, So, in hindsight, I wish I would have done things different. I've made my apologies and stuff to him, and he's made his to me, and we're tight. And it's still, like any relationship, that you're involved in. And when I say relationship, being in a band is like being married to 4 different people.
Right.
It's the same shit. So it's 5 times as hard to keep that going as, and you and everybody else knows, to keep your marriage and whatnot going. It's a struggle, and you got to work at it. So same thing occurs with the band.
Now, obviously, Bobby, when you guys were out on the road last year, you guys got really good reviews, probably better than, back in the day. Were you surprised that the chemistry was still kind of there after everything that's gone on?
Well, it's the first time I've sensed any hunger in a long time and again, I'm not soloing Stephen out, but like the last tour, let me rephrase this. When we were out with Jizzy for 7 years, while this bullshit was going on with us and Stephen, it was nice to be out there playing for the fans still, making my living, playing big gigs. We had a lot of good tours and stuff, but it never had the feeling of Ratt to me, while we were presenting Ratt catalog songs, which I enjoyed playing and people enjoyed. Some people liked, coming to see us with Jizzy, some didn't. But, it really I didn't realize until we got in the rehearsal room, and I remember the day clearly last year because my mom died the first day of our rehearsal for that tour. Oof. First day back with Stephen, and she was always a very staunch supporter that we get the band back together,
Right.
And she passed away May 7th, our first day of rehearsal. We just finished rehearsing. And I remember we just, at the end of rehearsal, just started playing the EP songs, which we hadn't played, Warren and I, in years, and we hadn't played it with ourselves or with Stephen. But that day, we finished that day with the EP stuff, and I was like, fuck, this is a trip, man.
Right.
And, because it really brought me back. And Stephen was singing really good, and the band sounded tight. It was Warren and me, Karabi and Crane and Pearcy, and I was like, all right, dude, now this fucking sounds like Ratt. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was excited. I was very excited. So I thought Steven performed very well on that tour. He had a very good sense of hunger, and, you know, he was more intense than prior tours. You know, when we got back together in 97, 98, 99, he was kind of a different, you know, I don't know. He just didn't have the fire that he had prior to that, or had this past summer. And well, I mean, we're still playing all the time, but that tour in particular, when we started, you know, that tour last summer, was great.
Sure.
Big gigs, and it was fun.
Do you think that some of that fire back from Steven came from the fact that he's really got himself cleaned up a lot since that last run with, I think that was on the Poison tour, the last run, right?
Absolutely.
The old days.
Well, I mean, yeah, I feel that way, and I'm sure he feels that way as well. And I know he's, you know, pretty proud of what he's accomplished in, you know, conquering the demons that, you know, he needed to conquer.
Sure.
Which is, you know, partying like he was before. So we've all slowed down pretty much, you know, in our partying thing. Even though we have a good time every day and every night out there, it's just, you know, nobody digs waking up with hangovers. We're more in focus of realizing that, you know, being hungover affects the show the next day, you know, and it's just, you know, you just got to be more moderate about your habits.
Right.
You know, so I'm glad that he made the choice he made. I think it was a wise choice, and it's benefited the band.
Well, Bobby, I want to go back because you referenced Jizzy there for a minute, and I got to call you out on the carpet a little bit, man. There was a thing, you know, obviously Jizzy was in the band for 7 years, and then when Steven came back, you were on record as kind of, you know, saying some things about Jizzy, like, you know, like he was just there. You know what I mean? Like he didn't help carry the band through that time. And it came, at least to me, it came off pretty condescending, like, you know, you couldn't find a guy that sounded like Steven, so you sort of settled. And I don't know, man.
I mean, that's, you know, first of all, you know, I've heard before that Jizzy made mention to Robbie that he thought that I dissed him in interviews and shit. I've never, to my knowledge, you know, or memory, said anything bad about him. I, you know, simply, first of all, I appreciate his participation in Ratt, you know, and what he did. He was easy to work with. Him and I never argued, and he was professional. I just felt, you know, that his voice didn't hit the mark for me. I had hoped it would have, and when we got him initially, but it came to me to be not the sound of the person that I wanted to hear singing Ratt songs. And I kind of base that on when I see other bands replacing their lead singers, they, you know, generally get someone that sounds almost just like the guy.
Right.
And that, you know, for me is what, at the time when we got him, and I was so pissed at Steven, the last thing I wanted was anyone that remotely looked like him or sounded like him. You know, I mean, I fucking hated the guy at the time.
Right.
He was ruining our life again by quitting in the middle of a tour. That's all I knew, and that's all I recognized. And, you know, thus hence, you know, enter Jizzy. But I have nothing bad to say about Jizzy. He's a professional. He's got a trained voice, you know, and you know, comes from a band that's pretty, you know, renowned for what they did, the Love Hate band, and you know, God bless him, and I wish him nothing but the best.
Step back into time and flip into fun at Pinball PA, the ultimate arcade and museum where classic games come alive. Located off Broadhead Road in the Hopewell Shopping Center, Pinball PA invites you to play with 400 pinball machines and video games, from rare gems to your all-time favorites like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Asteroids, Frogger, and the latest pinball hits. Perfect for families, friends, field trips, birthdays, and gamers of all ages, Pinball PA is open Tuesdays through Sundays with unlimited play for one low price. No quarters needed. Learn more at pinballpa.com.
Well, obviously, Bobby, you know, in here with 2008, Ratt is busy. Rumors are that there's going to be an album, you know, roughly by the end of the year. Any truth to that?
There is. I mean, you know, we're right now in the process of putting the nuts and bolts together on what we're doing on this summer's touring schedule, because there's 3 different lineups of things we can do, and we're trying to put together what is the best for the company, and that's the main thing we're working on right now. As far as the record goes, there's a couple of different offers from different labels. We haven't made the decision yet. We're just starting to meet with producers. I know Stephen and Warren have some ideas down. I got some stuff in the can. I haven't officially started writing yet because it's just, for me, until the absolute green light is okay, we are now in pre-production mode, then I'll get into that, because I'm just not into, I got the Saints record coming out. I don't have time to do a solo record, so I'm the kind of person, when I write, for my own, just myself, it's for something. I'm writing for a record too, that's, I know it's going to get done on such and such date, commence, you know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
I'll just sit around and stockpile 65 songs. Kind of thing.
Well, but before we end this, Bobby, I want to go way back to the Out of the Cellar days, just for one quick question.
Sure.
We had Beau Hill on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he indicated to us that when he was working with you guys, that he was a guy that kept a staunch early schedule and had you guys coming in at 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, what I know of Ratt, and from seeing you guys over the years, I find that very hard to believe.
It's hard for me not to just stop you in your tracks, because Beau Hill is such a dictator. Not only a dictator but a manipulator. And number 1 and 2, those are the number 1 and 2. Number 3, let me just preface that by saying the guy had great musical ideas and good harmony ideas, but his procedures in the studio I don't favor. We would never work with him again. And when he's saying he had us in there at 10, he had us in there at 10. And you know why he had us in there at 10? Sometimes because he'd be in there using our studio dime. This is what I've been told. Using that to record Fiona and such, and that he could be out of there. It was definitely not a very democratic society working with him, and I think a lot of other bands that I've talked to that have that same feeling, and I don't embrace that.
Right.
So, I do have thanks to Beau on different stuff he accomplished with Ratt, but I definitely have other things that would prevent me from ever visiting that again, too.
I hear you, man. Well, Bobby, obviously, man, Saints of the Underground is in stores on April the 22nd, and obviously, if people just keep their eyes open, Ratt is more than likely going to rat and roll their city. So, what am I missing that you want people to know?
God, I don't know. Nothing really. I think we covered everything. Just keep an eye out for when Ratt will be coming through. We'll be announcing this tour soon. Keep an eye out. I got this MySpace page, which will have book info for which publisher we're going with and when that'll be hitting stores. So that's about it. I'm, not just sit here trying to hawk stuff, but,
sure.
That's the business at hand here for myself.
Right, sure.
Looking forward to getting out there, obviously, as always, and spending summer having a great time on stage and playing for people and just enjoying life,
Well, Bobby, before I let you go, I have to ask you what's known as the traditional classic metal show question. We ask this to everybody, and we get a whole lot of answers, and I'm sure you've got one as well. How has Lemmy from Motorhead influenced your career?
Not at all.
Not at all.
I think maybe he loves the Beatles.
Okay.
But that didn't influence me. I know Lemmy, he's a friend and stuff, but, there's no influence whatsoever from Motorhead into... Matter of fact, it took me a long time to, understand and enjoy Motorhead.
Okay.
It took a friend of mine, a very close, great friend of mine, Mickey D., joining Motorhead. And I remember when Mickey joined Motorhead back, this was around 93, and I was like, how can you play that stuff every night,
Right.
And he's so, I love it, because he was in King Diamond, so he loves all that kind of speed metal stuff and that kind of, you know what I mean? So
right.
I wasn't really into, I was more into melodic hard rock, and I grew up on progressive rock and it's just Motorhead wasn't my cup of tea, but I definitely grew to respect and love that band. So.
Right on.
I love Lem. He's a great cat.
Right. Very cool. Well, obviously, Bobby, the new record is Saints of the Underground. It's called Love the Sin, Hate the Sinner. Out on April the 22nd. And Bobby, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track. It could be one of yours, something you've played on, or something you didn't play on. Just what do you want us to play, and maybe give us a little story about it.
Let's just go left field here, since just going off the last question we did. Why don't you play First Impression by Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
All right, very cool. And why that one?
Brain Salad Surgery, great drumming, great musical number. As a matter of fact, play part 1 and part 2.
All right, we will do that.
And the story behind that is it's just a record that I loved when it came out. I think that record came out in like 74. And when I was learning to play drums, I was trying to learn, I was already playing to all the records that I loved, like by likes of, the Beatles and Sabbath and Johnny Winter, Grand Funk, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin. But I was trying to learn how to play some more intricate, crazy stuff. So I started, putting the headphones on and playing to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And any drummer can tell you, man, it's not easy to play that stuff. So, and my son's a drummer, Michael. He's a great drummer, and he can play this stuff really well. So I'm dedicating this to Michael. All
right, well, here it is. This is Emerson, Lake and Palmer right here on your Classic Metal Show.
Get ready. The Classic Metal Show is live every Saturday from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern. It's always uncensored. Watch on CMS TV, Rumble, Odyssey, or X.